We don't want somebody sitting back saying you're not holding the mop the right way. Why don't you grab a mop? Why don't you help clean up?
Barack Obama at a San Francisco fundraiser last night, giving a little to the Republican Party.
2008, yes we can. 2009, grab a mop. Top line starts right now.
Hello and welcome to ABCNews.com's Top Line. I'm David Chalian.
And I'm Rick Klein.
Each weekday we're bringing you the very latest political headlines, reporting, insight, analysis, everything you need and want to know about politics.
And you know the drill. It's twitter.com/thenote and keep that conversation going all day long.
What is your top line this Friday, sir?
Mop-up duty. President Obama lashing out at some of his critics at a fundraiser last night in San Francisco, but the real cleanup work is being left to Democratic senators. Harry Reid is, of course, trying to craft a way to satisfy 60 senators on some version of a health care bill. They're still looking for some guidance from the president. He can give the big pep rally, as we saw again last night, in front of some donors, but I don't know how they make this happen still.
Well, this is really where it gets fun. And we've been talking about this for the better part of a year, is sort of the math of how you get to 60. And now we're at the stage of the game where each one of those potential 60 votes matters. And each one has a certain need that they want addressed. And as you said, that's Harry Reid's job now, and that'll continue to happen for the next couple of weeks. Waiting game. On Afghanistan, we are learning that there are reports decision from the president announcing a strategy may come at the end of October, beginning of November, before he leaves for his big Asia trip. The one thing the White House seems to have been doing here is trying to wait for finalized election results out of Afghanistan. It now looks like that's going to a runoff. The problem is, of course, that Afghanistan winter's coming on. It's tough to have an election then. If they rush an election now, that may cause some legitimacy problems. The White House doesn't want to go forward with a new strategy without knowing that it has a legitimized partner in Afghanistan, and that's a problem.
And it puts a lot of pressure on the Karzai government. What do they do to react? And every day that goes by, there is less and less political wiggle room from both the left and the right. They want to see a decision on Afghanistan. Reid's rumble. 13 months before the general election, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid is up with a pair of new ads in his home state of Nevada. David, all indications, if you needed anything else to figure out whether he might be in trouble or not, I think the answer is right here. I guess if you've got a big bankroll, spend it early. But this is extraordinarily early when you consider that he doesn't have a primary opponent.
Not as early as Tom Daschle in his losing election. Not that that's an example Harry Reid wants, but it is early. But you're right. He has the bank account, Rick. He's clearly in trouble, but he is so far ahead in cash, and he is the majority leader that can deliver stuff home. I'm not willing to write off Harry Reid's chances at re-election just yet. Finally, 41 and 44. Yes, George H.W. Bush and Barack Obama will share a stage today down in Texas at Texas A&M. This is at the Bush School. President Bush wrote an invitation making clear no politics whatsoever involved in this event. Of course, that's very odd to say when you have two presidents sharing a stage. But this is a picture, especially right now, that Barack Obama and his White House just loves to have out there.
Oh, this is great. I mean, I think the memories of 41 are still warm in this country, and it helps him with maybe both parties as well. And I love that HW is calling on the welcoming Aggie spirit, rather, to welcome him to campus. There may be a protester or two.
Maybe a protester or two. We'll see about that. We're going to begin with the economy. Huge economic news this week. We're joined by Bernstein from the White House briefing room. He is the chief economic advisor to Vice President Joe Biden and top Obama aide on the economy. Thank you very much for being here, Jared. And I want to begin, before we get into the stimulus report you guys issued, I want to begin with the economy overall. We saw the Dow hit 10,000 this week, and there was big hoopla, the hats on Wall Street. I know that you guys are very, very careful not to hang too much on the market, and obviously jobs aren't there yet. But is there a moment when you do see that in the White House that at least you take half a second to high-five each other, that things look to be better on Wall Street, and that must be a good feeling inside the White House, no?
I mean, to some extent. The fact is, I think the Dow has crisscrossed 10,000 multiple times since it bottomed out back in 2007. But I think where your intuition is correct there is that we certainly notice when the market is on an upturning trend, and we appreciate that from the perspective of people who have investments. You know, this is not just a Wall Street issue. For example, if you look at 401ks, the typical 401k, and that means a lot to middle-class families, is up 35% since that bottoming in last March. Now, I'm not saying that's made up all of the losses by any stretch of the imagination, but we're very interested in the extent to which our interventions and those of the Fed have helped pull financial markets and the overall economy back from the brink. That's what's important there.
Jared, you responded to this latest report on jobs numbers created by the stimulus and said that it exceeds the expectations set by the White House. I wonder if you can explore that a little bit
Sure.
and explain to people how this is 30,000 direct jobs, and why this could be exceeding expectations when we still have 10% unemployment.
I think you've got to put that in context. Remember, this report covers $16 billion, okay? We're talking about a $787 billion package. We're talking about direct recipient reporting, 30,000 private sector jobs on about 2% of the overall bill. And remember, it's just direct jobs. It doesn't count the indirect jobs that you get when people go out and spend that money. So if you extrapolate from that number, and this is very preliminary stuff, I think the intuition behind your question is correct, that you don't want to make big global assertions. What those numbers suggest is that we are on track to do what we said we're doing through the Recovery Act, which is to help offset some of the very deep pain out there in the labor market.
Is there an economic value, an economic benefit to perceptions around the stimulus? Does the economy get better if people think that the stimulus is working? Does that have an impact?
Well, sure. I mean, confidence in how the economy is performing, both by businesses, families, consumers, always makes a difference. But I think the critical kind of kernel of truth in there is that, of course, the Recovery Act is very much working. We have saved or created about 1 million jobs thus far. Now, those are not just our estimates, and I think this is important. Private sector forecasters who get paid to go out and do this will tell you that the Recovery Act has added between 2 and 3 percentage points to GDP in the last quarter, the third quarter of this year. Now, we don't have those numbers yet, but if the forecasts are correct and GDP is in the 2 to 3% range, that means you pull out the Recovery Act and you're looking at no growth. So the Recovery Act has clearly helped both on the overall macroeconomy side, but also on the job side.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean it has offset the massive jobs deficit that greeted us when we got here. By no means, and the president's acutely aware of that, but it is helping.
Jared, just clear one other thing up for me here on this stimulus report. And you just said this is about the $16 billion awarded federal money directly to contractors in states. But it was reported that only $2.2 billion has actually gone to these contractors. When is the other 13 and change billion going to get to these contractors? What's the delay there?
No, the way these outlays and obligations work, and especially regarding contracts, and this is really important, I'm glad you gave me the chance to explain here, is that the contracts are not fully paid for until the work is done. It's as if you were building a house. You hired a contractor to build your house. You're not going to give them the final check until the house is done. So these outlays are out the door starting to fund the work as it comes in. But the economic activity, the actual job creation, is often associated with the accepting of the contract, the accepting of the bid, and the obligation of the funds. That gets the work started on fixing the roofs, on laying the rail, on fixing the bridges. That's what we're seeing now. And the final outlays, the final checks go out when the work is completed.
Jared, very briefly, the president talks about fiscal discipline and the importance of hard choices all the time. Social Security Administration says this week there are not going to be a COLA, cost of living increase in Social Security payments, but the administration is calling for $250 payments to Social Security recipients. Why is that fiscally responsible? If there isn't a need for a COLA adjustment because there is no inflation, why hand out more money to Social Security recipients?
Well, look, the fact is that whether you're a Social Security recipient, you're someone on disability, there's veterans who are going to benefit from these payments. The economy, at least from the perspective of the labor market, from how families are doing in terms of their wages and incomes, and you can hear the president, the vice president stress these points consistently, is simply still a very difficult road to hoe for many of these folks. And so helping them at a time like this makes a lot of sense. Now, this $250 check was something that was part of the first 2009, the current year of the stimulus. There was always a question as to whether that should be repeated.
Extended, right.
And extended and repeated. Given economic conditions and the kind of difficulties these families face, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Jared Bernstein, Chief Economic Advisor to Vice President Biden and a top member there at the White House. Thank you very much for being here.
Sure.
We greatly appreciate it.